Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our first guest is the president of Online Publishers Association of Nigeria. He'll be discussing the importance of social media and how it influences the political process. Joining us in the studio is the publisher of The Will, Austin Ogana. Welcome to the morning show. Good morning, sir.
Much.
Austin, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good to see you.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, well, I mean, you are based in the United States.
Correct, yes.
You know, you monitor the process in the US, and you are also not too far away from home with through your publication, online publication, The Will. With the benefit of knowing what goes on in these two political systems, how will you assess what has been happening in Nigeria in the last few days?
The politics of Nigeria in the last few days has been very interesting. I'm sure if you've been on the internet, you find a lot of comments and trolls. There's been a lot of interest, especially in the presidential primaries of the People Democratic Party, because the candidacy of the APC had already been settled, with President Buhari being the sole candidate. It was interesting to see how it turned out for the PDP, because we all expected to have a rancorous process, considering the number of qualified aspirants that they had. But in the long run, after a tense and intense session, Atiku Abubakar emerged, and the social media went wild, because apparently we had projected that Tambuwal, the governor of Sokoto, would emerge, considering the...
Was it a projection or a suspicion that it was a favorite of the host governor?
Yes, it was more of a projection, because up to the build-up to the primary, the People's Democratic Party had an issue over the venue of the convention. If you recall, I think it was the BOT versus the NWC on one side and Wike on the other side. There were debates on whether to remove it from Port Harcourt, with Wike being the home governor and suspected to be backing Tambuwal. So Tambuwal, you know, with the amount of cash in Rivers, the amount of cash at Wike's disposal, was tipped to be number one, also considering that he was being backed by the Sultan of Sokoto as well. You know, but Atiku's emergence, a couple of people I spoke, they didn't even give Atiku a chance, you know, because of the issues he had with Obasanjo. But somehow, last minute, the so-called owners of PDP decided to back him. And
is it the owners of the PDP that decided to back him, or that there was a credible election process that threw him up as the winner, convincingly also, with over 1,500 votes?
Yes, absolutely. I must commend the PDP for putting up a very good process. But you know, in politics, especially when it comes to primaries, the establishment in the parties somehow decide how it turns out. But the fact remains that Atiku was able to build the correct coalition of interest, and he emerged against a Tambuwal that struggled to build the coalition. And so I'm sure if you check the traffic on the internet, the interest in Nigeria's, in the PDP's presidential primary yesterday, you see that it generated more debate than that of the APC, which more or less was more of a coronation of the incumbent.
Yeah, as of this morning, we have a short list that we can deal with in Nigeria. We have, for the APC, President Buhari, who is the incumbent president. For the PDP now, we have former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. For the SDP, we have former Governor Donald Duke. We have Obi Ezekwesili. We have Omoyele Sowore. We have Fela Durotoye. We have Eunice Atuejide. We have, I mean, quite a list. We have, what's his name, Benga Olawepo Asim. Well, yeah. So we have quite a number of persons to deal with. When you look at the field, this short list, how do you rate the chances of the persons who have emerged as presidential candidates?
I'll just narrow it down to two. I mean, for me in Nigeria, it's always been a two-horse race. Elections in Nigeria are all about money. You need to have the money, you need to have the structure. I think for the other candidates, I don't think they've done a lot of work, because if you go to rural Nigeria, where you have a decent number of voters, most of these people are not known. Most of these people are just known on the social media. Not everybody you've mentioned, I can mention off heart. I really have to take my time, So I think this election is just a two-horse race.
So you don't think the young people stand a chance? Obi Ezekwesili is well known. Omoyele Sowore is well known, particularly among young people. Fela Durotoye is well known, contrary to what you have said. Kingsley Moghalu has also been all over the country. And these are educated, competent people who say they want to take back Nigeria.
For me, I'm a realist. Whenever I come to Nigeria, I go to rural Nigeria.
Rural Nigeria?
Yes.
Okay.
You have tons of voters in rural Nigeria. The truth is that in Nigeria, elites don't vote.
Yeah.
Elites don't vote. 2-3 days a week before the election, they all pack their bags and they check out. Especially when, it's a very heated election. The elites never vote. The elites won't stand in the sun. The elites won't stand in the rain. No, the people that vote are your market women, your Okada riders, your bus drivers. Those peasants are the ones that vote. And if you ask them today who they know, they'll tell you they know Buhari, they'll tell you they know Atiku. If you ask them the two political parties they know, they'll tell you it's PDP and the APC.
We had Sowore here the other day, and he talked about how he's gone all around the rural areas as well to actually talk about his presidential campaign, and he thinks that he's gaining a lot of momentum, correct? Yeah. And what do you think?
Yes, for me, the likes of Sowore and the others need to do more work. I don't think their success will be reaped in this cycle. They need to do more work. It took PDP a lot of money and a lot of time and effort to build the machinery that they currently have today.
So it all boils down to money,
yes,
correct?
So it all boils down to money, your tenacity, and you have to do it over and over again.
So what do you think Nigerians should expect from both candidates?
In this election cycle, it is going to be very interesting because you have two very popular candidates, two very experienced candidates, two candidates that have been known to Nigerians for a very long time, so they have a track record, to be judged on. So it depends on, Nigerians have seen, Nigerians saw how Atiku Abubakar performed as vice president when he was Obasanjo's deputy. Nigerians have seen how the current president is doing. So the records are there for these two men to run on and for Nigerians to judge. So for me, it depends on how well your business has done in the last 4 years for Buhari. Those that are going to vote for Buhari will vote for him based on how well they think he's done and how well their well-being, have been improved in the last 4 years. And
let me rephrase the question.
Okay.
Because I need you to make specific statements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, do you think, on the basis of his performance in the last 3.5 years, that President Buhari deserves a second term? And do you think, if given the chance, Atiku Abubakar will be a better president?
For me, that's a very tricky one. Buhari's last 3.5 years, has been quite turbulent, considering where Nigeria was when he took over, and some of the things that he did and some of the things that that he shouldn't have done that has gotten Nigeria to where we are today. But like I said, it depends on your situation. I know. Some people have not had it good, but some people have had it better. So it just depends on...
You know some of the people who have prospered under this administration?
Yes, I have, technically.
You have prospered?
Yes, I have.
But you don't live here?
Yeah, but I have businesses here. So, it just depends on... if you're someone that has keyed into agriculture, for instance,
okay,
you say, oh, I've done well under Buhari. If you're someone that has lost, investments because you invested in the Naira, you say have lost a lot of money under Buhari. Say, for instance, you took a loan of $1 million from the United States just before Buhari became president, and you brought it in here to invest at 160.
You're still sidestepping the question.
I'm not sidestepping the question.
No, you are.
Okay.
I'm asking you.
Yes.
Okay, between the two of them,
yes,
who do you think is the better candidate? Since you say it's a two-horse race,
yes,
who do you think will make a better president?
That's putting me on a very tight spot.
Well, you are just a public commentator. It doesn't matter.
Yes, I'm a public commentator, but as well, I do not really want to, to make that call on TV because I'm still
doing government contracts.
No, I'm not, because I'm still very undecided. I'm still very undecided between the two candidates. I have looked. I know these two people. I've followed their politics for a long time. I believe I know Atiku's capacities.
Okay, let me ask you this then. What do you think is his greatest strength?
Who?
Atiku. Correct.
Atiku is someone that has driven the message that I like, the message of restructuring. I am for restructuring. I think the way Nigeria is today, cannot work. It's never worked. So, I believe in some form of restructuring, not breaking Nigeria down, but, making it, trick it in such a way that the bureaucracy is less, it works, give more powers to the states, empower the private, get the private sector more involved, in things that they should get involved in, and get government completely off what government doesn't.
And his weakness?
His weakness is that he's been around politics for a long time. I really don't like politicians. So that's one weakness, that I believe he has. He's been around the scene. I don't think, for me, I don't think age is an issue, but the fact that he's been around for a very long time may be a weakness.
It's part of the status quo.
Yes.
Yeah, but let's talk about social media.
Yeah.
You are president of the Online Publishers Association of Nigeria. You also run The Wheel, an online newspaper. How much impact do you think that the social media can, make in this political process, emerging political process?
It's interesting because the social media has, become a dominant factor in the Nigerian, both social, cultural and political space. I know in the last election in 2015, there were covert efforts to use the social media to influence the public, to get messages across, and I think that was when the craze started. But today, looking at the couple of elections that we've had, both at the state and yesterday's or Saturday, Sunday's presidential primary of the PDP, you find that the social media has really become, a platform, for both information and disinformation. So my advice to everyone out there, really, and that's what Open is really about, is to double check whatever information you get, because this is the election season. The social media is going to be a dominant player. People will use it. People will use it to disseminate. Just before I got on the show, I was on Twitter and I was laughing because you had some things that were not true.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're dealing with fake news now. So
yes.
Can you give us some credible sources? How can we actually double check these information?
Yes. Apart from the credible media, you trustworthy news sources are those sources that have built their credibility over time. My number one flag is when you see a website or a handle that you've never seen before just emerge. That's your number one.
Or even blogs.
Or even blogs.
How can you?
Yes, that's your number one flag. I don't know these guys. I don't know how credible they are. So you see an information or you see information on that platform, you know, it behoves on you to double check and double check.
But how much of a threat do you think, you know, these persons I call keyboard intellectuals, 140-word thinking capacity commentators, you know, how much of a threat do you think they pose? Because they come under the cover of being social media influencers, and they get a large following, you know, they clickbait, and half of the time, many of them have agenda, and they are recruited by politicians. How do we check the threat that they pose?
You know, for me, that's very difficult because you have, you know, you have the reading public that's very naive and very lazy, and I think that's why these people are in business. Because I just cannot have someone tweet something to me and I just take it hook and sink and just walk away. But it's so unfortunate that most of the youths, you know, when I was in the States, someone sent me, I think it was Buhari, someone sent me a clip of what, I think Buhari was abroad then, and he said something about Nigerian youths being lazy. And I looked at it and said to myself, are Nigerian youths actually lazy? Because some of the things I see on social media, excuse me, actually confirms that some Nigerian youths are really lazy with the way they take in information and don't, you know, some ridiculous things. You know, some ridiculous tweets are being retweeted. You know, some ridiculous things are being rebroadcast. And you just wonder, you know, how naive can people be?
Will you recommend that there should be some kind of control of social media content? I mean, you are president of the Online Publishers Association. In some countries, Tanzania, for example, there are controls. In Nigeria, there was an attempt to introduce a social media bill, which, you know, we all fought because we thought it would derogate from the freedom of expression. What's your position?
Yeah, for
and the
me,
position of the organization?
yeah, you know, for me, I am for some kind of regulation, self-regulation. Let us all, the serious ones in quotes, let us all come together, have a model, agree, sit down with lawmakers or, you know, those that are supposed to put these laws together, and let's all work within the parameter, because we can't have a loose system like this. People sit at home and tweet things or post things without being held accountable for what they do.
What's OPAN likely to do about this? I mean, what do you do in terms of standards among your members?
Yeah, you know,
what they put out?
Yes, you know, amongst our members, early this year we had a conference where we brought everybody together and tried to emphasize on you being responsible for what you put out there. So I've been talking to our members, talking to everybody, you know, making them understand the power of the media, the power of that electronic that you have in your hands and what it can do, the values it can bring and the destructions it can bring. So we're more like self-regulated and open, you know, emphasizing, you know, sometimes I go online and I read a story that I think may not be actually correct. I pick up my phone or I email the publisher to say, I think you should double check this story because what I'm hearing may not be true. Okay. And it happens as well. You know, someone calls me, you know, I see a story on your website, you may not be aware, your people may have, but I don't think it's true, you may want to double check. So stuff like that, you know, we try to help ourselves. But other than that, you know, the fact remains that we need some form of regulation that we'll all be comfortable with. You know,
thank you very much, Austin Ogana, for coming to the morning show and for the insights you've shared with us.
Yeah, it was quite insightful to have you here. Thank you. It's time now for a short break. When we return, we'll have Group Managing Director of Sahara Power Group, Kola Adeshina, will be joining us in the studios. Stay with us.